freshman composition. Finally got through that bachelor's degree, got a master's degree here. Then left and got a doctorate degree in Illinois, and then still hadn't learned very much, so I did some postdoc work down at Vanderbilt University. And then, of course, ended up back at Murray State. Greatest place I know to be. I'll tell you what, when they contacted me and said, we'd like you to talk to the parents a little bit about some survival skills, I thought, well, I can do that. And I do want to share some thoughts with you this morning about what you can cooperate with your students in thinking and doing. If you've been reading, Murray State gets a lot of accolades about being among the tops in several different journals. Have you read those? Well, that's not an accident, folks. We're proud of that. And you should be proud of that. Let me tell you one of my proud moments. It's been a while. 1985, I was chairman of the Department of Communication and Theater at that time, and we wanted a Department of Organizational Communication. Well, in order to get a new major, it's tough. And that's okay, because what used to be called the Council on Post-Secondary Education wants to make sure your tax dollars are spent wisely, that they're not spent frivolously, that they don't create irrelevant programs and so forth. So when I proposed a Department of Organizational Communication, I had to go to Frankfurt and sit at a chair by myself while the board members sat behind a table, 11 of them, and boy, they just carp at you, they shoot at you to justify why you want a new department in your university. Well, that was okay. I had the answers for them, and they were good answers. We got our department. But you know what I learned that day? The Council on Post-Secondary Education at that time consisted of 11 people. 10 of those 11 council members, where do you suppose they sent their students for their undergraduate education? Murray State. Now, what does that tell you? The people who knew more about education than anybody in the state, when their kids got ready to go to college, they sent them to Murray State. All but one, and we'll forgive him. I want you to be proud of your kids being here, because you should be, and I want them to be proud to be here. And for them to be successful, it's going to take a joint effort. You know, Dr. Chandra says, what are the survival skills for students? But you know, that works both ways. There are some skills that students have to have, and there are some that Murray State representatives, particularly faculty, have to have. I happen to think that we have a good president. Randy Dunn, I think, does a good job for Murray State University. He's provided good leadership. Tim Todd is the Dean of the College of Business, where I still teach, and I think he does an excellent job. I hired him in 1985 in my department. But you know what I know? The ultimate success at Murray State is when you have a faculty member in a classroom. Yeah, you got to have a good president, you got to have good deans, but ultimately it comes down to a student and a faculty member in a classroom. So I want us to talk about some expectations that I think both can have. Now I'm going to show you how dated I am. It's not quite as bad as it looks, but almost. I brought an overhead projector. Does this date me or what? Well, let me tell you though. All we done do it today. I've never had an overhead projector fail me. I have taken numerous memory chips to some place where they said, oh yeah, it's compatible with our machine, and you put it in, and guess what? It didn't work. So, I've never had an overhead fail me. That's what I want to use this morning a little bit. If you can see it, it'll be good, but it won't be absolutely necessary. Don't worry about it if you can't. I want us to talk about some mutual educational experiences, and then I'm going to quit pretty soon, and if you've got questions, I'll be happy to respond to them as best I can. I want to start with what faculty have a right to expect. I've taught for a lot of years, and there are things I expect of my students, and I tell them that right up front. This is what I expect of you. The first thing I tell them is, I expect expect you to be here. I said I taught 30 years. Let me tell you, I never really counted this up, but I guarantee you, I can count on one hand the number of students who have ever flunked my class who came to class. Go to class. You don't have to be a genius to pass these classes at Murray State if you'll go and listen. It doesn't take that much. Invariably, what creates the failure is when students get distracted and they quit going to class, something else competes for their time, whatever, and then they fail. Go to class. A faculty member has a right to expect your presence. Number two, your effort. I don't know if we're going to get these where you can see or not. Maybe so. Your effort. College is an enjoyable time, and I'm glad it is, and I want it to be for yours. But your purpose in coming, despite what freshmen may think, the purpose in being here is not to play. It is to enjoy yourself, but number one is to apply yourself to your academic curriculum. So, go to class and apply yourself. Try. Give it your best shot. Now, some of you, how many of you have ever had a class in organizational communication? One person, two people. You didn't have it in high school though, did you? My point is simply this. When you go to college, you have a chance to study some areas you didn't even know about in high school. They didn't talk about them in high school. Organizational communication, for example, is a major in which we focus on skill building. We talk about decision-making skills, we talk about listening skills, presentational skills, coaching and counseling skills, analytical skills, critical thinking skills. That's the kind of thing we focus on. How important do you think that is in most jobs? Let me tell you, it's critical. It's critical. If all you do is learn content at Murray State, most of it will be obsolete before you graduate. You have to learn, how to think, how to process data. Well, that takes some effort. And as a faculty member, I expect you to give effort. I expect you to come to class, and I expect you to give me your full attention while you're there. Number three. Class-based communication. The reason what I'm talking about there is, if there's something you don't understand, let somebody know that. I'm going to jump ahead of myself a little bit here. For those of you who are in school here, how many times in high school did a counselor ever say to you, now when you go to college, you better get that because they're going to throw it out there, and if you don't get it, they don't care. They'll just move right on. Did they tell you that? Yes, they did, didn't they? That's not true. Or it's not true in most colleges. People want to help you, but you got to let them know it. This old idea that faculty just up there and throw it out and they don't care, that, I'm going to tell you, if my faculty had demonstrated that attitude, they would have been former faculty. We're here to teach students and to do everything we can to make those students successful. Now, the students got to do some stuff. They got to come to class. They got to give it a good shot, try their best, and they got to let us know when there's a problem. If they're not catching on to something, if they need help with something, then talk to us about that. Let us know that. It doesn't do any good to go back to the dorm and tell your dorm mate, I just don't understand what he means by so-and-so. Tell the teacher that. They can work with you in trying to learn it. So, I'm not talking about chatting here. I'm not talking about casual communication, nothing wrong with that. But what I'm really talking about here is course-based, class-based communication, and being as clear with that as you possibly can. Number 4, compliance with legitimate class rules. Every teacher's got a few of their little quirks. Some teachers require things that don't seem to make much sense. Well, to tell you the truth, folks, I guess that's one of the privileges you have of being a teacher. You get to set some of those rules. I do. Let me give you an example. I'm teaching a class right now. It's a graduate class. And I tell my students first night of class, it's a weekender, so it's been a couple of weeks ago. First night of class, I say, I want you to turn in an abstract of a research article in your field of interest. And now listen to me. I want it to be no less than 2 pages and no more than 3 pages in length. You got that? Okay. And I say it's got to have a citation, and it's got to have, you know, an acceptable bibliographic form, so on and so forth. Now, this lady sitting there with your arms crossed. What's your name?
Andrea.
Andrea? Andrea, how long is your abstract going to be?
No less than 2 pages, no more than 3.
Oh, I think I'm in love. That's right! Do you know what the first abstract I got was? 1 page. 1 page. And I had said to the class, some of you won't do that. Some of you are going to turn in 4 pages. Some of you will turn in 1. And everybody said, and the first abstract I get is 1 page long.